There is an invisible place where the noise of the world cannot reach. A quiet space where the soul finds rest, even when everything around insists on shouting fear, doubt, and insecurity. It is in this place that God works within us. While many focus only on what is happening on the outside, the Lord is strengthening what no one else can see. The inner life of a heart that chooses to trust Him. Nothing that rises against a life protected by God has absolute power. No pressure, no opposing words, no threatening situation can extinguish what the Lord Himself has ignited. What comes from God is not fragile. He plants faith with deep roots, hope that endures, and a confidence that does not depend on circumstances to stay alive. The Lord's care is neither distant nor occasional. He does not watch from afar, waiting for things to work themselves out. God draws near. He surrounds. He sustains. When the mind fills with confusing thoughts and the heart begins to waver, His presence brings clarity. When human strength reaches its limit, that is where divine power begins to manifest even more strongly. Fear often tries to present itself as an authority. It attempts to dictate decisions, steal peace, and paralyze forward steps. But fear loses ground when faith recognizes who God truly is. Not a weak or distant God, but a present, powerful Father who is attentive to every detail of His children's lives. Trust in the Lord does not remove challenges, but it redefines who is in control. While everything on the outside may seem unstable, God is building firmness on the inside. He strengthens the mind, calms emotions, and establishes spiritual security. Even on difficult days, something supernatural is happening. The heart learns to remain standing, the soul learns to breathe in peace, and faith learns to rest, knowing it is not alone. There are situations that arise without warning, pressures that appear suddenly, conflicts that enter without permission. Still, nothing takes the Lord by surprise. Before any threat organizes itself, God has already prepared protection. Before an attack arrives, He has already released deliverance. Divine care is not improvised. It was already in place. When the heart trusts God, it may feel the impact of the battles, but it does not lose direction. It may cry, but it does not surrender. It may face hard days, but it does not abandon hope, because true security is not found in the absence of problems, but in the certainty of who fights for us. This certainty changes everything. Anxiety begins to lose its grip. Despair no longer dominates. Faith grows quietly, strengthening every area of life. And little by little, the heart begins to live with the conviction that even in the middle of battles, it was never abandoned. If this word spoke to your heart, write Amen. God is my strength in the comments. There is a deep difference between hearing about God and being sustained by Him. Those who only know stories about the Lord may admire His greatness, but those who were upheld during their hardest days carry a certainty that cannot be erased. That certainty is born when life feels heavy, when strength seems insufficient, and yet something unseen prevents a total collapse. There are battles no one witnesses, internal struggles that never appear on social media, silent pressures that only the pillow knows, long nights when the heart speaks with God in silence, without polished words, only tears and sighs. Even when no one notices, the Lord sees. Even when no one listens, He hears. Even when everything seems still, God is at work. The hand of the Lord works in places no one else can reach. He touches confused thoughts, strengthens fragile emotions, and restores areas wounded by time and disappointment. When God becomes our security, the environment around us may remain unstable, but something within us becomes firm. It is not the absence of storms, it is a solid foundation. The life of those who trust the Lord is not free from difficulties. Struggles come, criticism appears, opposition rises, but none of these define who they are. The identity of those who belong to God is not formed by human opinions or temporary circumstances, but by the eternal promises of the Father. How many times have you looked back and thought, that could have destroyed me? Situations that, humanly speaking, seemed impossible to overcome. Paths that appeared to have no way out. Decisions that almost cost everything. And yet you remained standing. That was not luck. That has a name, deliverance. There were doors that closed and caused deep pain at the time. They felt like loss, failure, or delay. But later you realized they were protection. God removed you from scenarios that could have caused greater harm. He blocked paths that would not lead to purpose. His care is not always loud, but it is constant and precise. Trust in the Lord does not depend on the emotional state of the day. Even when the heart feels tight, the soul remembers. God is still in control. Even when the mind tries to fill with fear, the Spirit responds with faith. This confidence is built through real experiences with God. Every answered prayer, every quiet deliverance, every day you thought you wouldn't make it, but did. No one can erase the story between you and God. It gives you courage to keep going when the road feels heavy. It gives you strength not to give up when the world insists it's over. Because those who have been sustained by the Lord learn that He is never late. If you recognize that it was God who has sustained you this far, write "so far the Lord has helped me" in the comments. There comes a moment when the heart understands that nothing is more valuable than staying close to God. Not out of obligation, not out of religious routine, but out of spiritual hunger, a deep longing to be where the Lord's presence is, to hear His voice clearly, and to live under His direction. When this choice is made, everything begins to realign within. What once seemed essential loses its grip. What was once neglected gains eternal weight. God's presence stops being an isolated event and becomes the center of life. It is no longer something fitted into the routine. It becomes what sustains the routine. The heart realizes that without Him, nothing truly makes sense. Seeking God is not escaping life's responsibilities. On the contrary, it is learning to face them with strength from above. It is carrying peace on the inside while dealing with pressure on the outside. It is discovering a spiritual place where the soul finds rest even when life is full of demands and challenges. In the presence of the Lord, something deep happens. Wounds begin to heal. Thoughts find order. Agitated emotions grow calm. Not because problems disappear, but because perspective changes. Before God, the heart remembers. He is greater than every difficulty. When someone learns to value time with the Lord, desires begin to change. It is no longer just about answers, but about relationship. Not only blessings, but God Himself. Not just miracles, but intimacy. And it is in this closeness that faith matures and grows strong. God does not hide from those who seek Him sincerely. He reveals Himself in personal and transformative ways, sometimes through a word that deeply touches the heart. sometimes through an unexplainable peace in the middle of chaos, sometimes through clear direction when everything felt confusing. He knows exactly how to speak to each heart. Staying close to God is also protection. There are decisions, environments, and paths the Lord keeps us from simply because we chose to remain near Him. Intimacy with God produces spiritual sensitivity, discernment, and wisdom to avoid what could pull us away from purpose. When the presence of the Lord becomes our greatest treasure, loneliness loses its grip, fear weakens, and hope grows. Because we understand that no matter where we are, at home, at work, among people, or in silence, God is still there. He walks with us in every detail of life. If your desire is to draw closer and closer to God, write, "Lord, I want more of your presence," in the comments. There are days when pressure builds so heavily that the heart feels like there is nowhere to run. Unexpected news arrives, situations slip out of control, and the soul seems to shrink under the weight of circumstances. It is precisely in these moments that God's care reveals itself in a deeper, quieter, and more personal way. The Lord is not indifferent to the struggles of His children. He does not observe from a distance like someone merely watching suffering. God gets involved, He draws near. He creates refuge when everything around feels threatening. There is a protection unseen by human eyes, yet very real in the spiritual realm. Even when we don't notice, the Lord knows exactly how to guard us. Many deliverances happen in silence. Dangers that never fully surface. Conversations we never hear. Plans that are interrupted before reaching us. Paths that are blocked to prevent greater pain. While we go about our routine without understanding certain no's, God was already saying yes to our preservation. When the Lord hides us under His care, it does not mean abandonment or isolation. It means protection. It means preservation. There are seasons when God keeps us more reserved, not to diminish us, but to strengthen us within. Silence is often a time of preparation and safety. After that season, God establishes us in a secure place. He stabilizes us emotionally, spiritually, and even mentally. It is like being lifted to a higher position, out of reach of threats that once seemed so close. This elevation is not for pride, but for testimony, not for self-exaltation, but to reveal how real God's care truly is. When the Lord sustains us, insecurity begins to lose ground. Decisions are no longer driven by fear or impulse, but by trust in God. Faith begins to replace doubt. Peace starts to govern the heart, even while challenges remain. Being secure in God does not mean living without battles. It means the battles no longer have the power to destroy us. They may try to strike, but they cannot knock us down, because we are upheld by something greater than ourselves. And when we recognize how much God has already protected us, even without our awareness, the heart fills with gratitude. A gratitude that does not depend on a perfect life, but on the certainty that even in imperfection, the Lord is still caring for every detail. If you believe God has been your refuge, write, "God is my safe shelter," in the comments. When the heart begins to recognize God's constant care, something natural is born within us, a sincere desire to worship Him. Not a shallow joy dependent only on good days, but a deep gratitude rooted in the certainty that the Lord remains faithful even when days are hard. This gratitude does not ignore pain. It chooses to see God's goodness above circumstances. Worship stops being a single moment and becomes a lifestyle. The heart learns to notice small deliverances, quiet answers, and details that once went unseen. Gradually, reasons for gratitude replace complaints. The soul becomes more sensitive to God's work in everyday life. There is power when we choose to praise the Lord. As we exalt Him, something shifts within us. The burden feels lighter, hope is renewed, and faith grows stronger. Praise does not deny the reality of problems, but it reminds the soul that God is greater than every one of them. Even surrounded by challenges, we can lift our heads and declare our trust in the Lord. This spiritual posture weakens fear and strengthens courage, not because we are strong on our own, but because our confidence is anchored in a God who never fails. Praise is also a declaration of faith ahead of time. It says, "I don't see the outcome yet, but I trust that God is already working." When we worship while waiting, we show that our faith is not tied to circumstances, but to God's faithful character. The joy that comes from God is not fragile. It sustains us through tears, strengthens us when exhaustion sets in, and reignites hope when everything feels colorless. It is a joy born in the Spirit and poured into the heart, bringing life even on difficult days. The more we recognize who God is, the more natural it becomes to worship Him, not only for what He does, but for who He is: faithful, loving, just, and present. He deserves our worship in visible victories and silent processes alike. When we learn to live with a grateful heart, our view of life changes. We begin to see God's hand where we once saw coincidence. We realize He was always working, even when we didn't understand His ways. If today you have reasons to thank the Lord, write, "I praise you, Lord," in the comments. God does not act in our lives without purpose. Every intervention, every deliverance, and every restoration builds a story with eternal meaning. Everyone who experiences the Lord's care carries a testimony, not a perfect story, but a life marked by grace, mercy, and divine transformation. Testimony is not born from a pain-free life, but from a journey where God was present in the midst of pain. It is living proof that pain did not have the final word, that failure did not cancel grace, and that the past could not block the future God prepared. Where there were ruins, the Lord built hope. Often we underestimate the value of what God has already done for us. We think our story is too simple, too common, too small to impact anyone. But what you overcame may be exactly what someone else is still facing. Your testimony may be the answer to a prayer someone has been desperately praying. When we remember what God has done, our faith grows stronger. The memory of deliverances, open doors, emotional healing, and restoration rekindles gratitude. Testifying is not only speaking to others, it is also reminding our own soul that God remains faithful. Some people need to hear that starting over is possible. Others need to know that God's forgiveness is real. Some need to discover that hope still exists after great loss. And the Lord chooses to use real stories, ordinary lives, and genuine experiences to reach wounded hearts. Sharing what God has done is not self-promotion. It is glorifying the Lord. It is recognizing that without Him, we would not be where we are today. It is giving God the honor for every step we were able to take, even when continuing felt impossible. When we speak of the works of the Lord, our story becomes a bridge of faith for others. What was once pain becomes encouragement. what was once tears begins to produce hope. God wastes no experience. Whether your testimony is a dramatic deliverance or a quiet change of character, everything God transforms carries eternal value. Everything He touches reflects His love. If you recognize that your life is a testimony of God's care, write, "My story glorifies God," in the comments. There comes a point when everything begins to connect clearly within the heart. The faith built, the care received, the quiet deliverances, the cultivated gratitude, the testimony formed, and the constant prayer all become part of the same spiritual reality. Life with God stops being made of isolated moments and becomes a continuous, deep, and genuine relationship. God does not walk on the sidelines of our story. He is present in every detail, sustaining us when we stumble, lifting us when we fall, and strengthening us when our own strength is gone. Every time He protects us, even unseen, He is shaping our character, aligning our hearts, and preparing us for what lies ahead. Nothing is wasted in the Lord's hands. Many answers do not come the way we expect, but they always come the way we need. In every waiting season, God works. In every process, He matures us. In every silence, He teaches. God's care is not limited to solving problems. He transforms people. He strengthens faith, adjusts perspective, and teaches the heart to rest. When we understand this, prayer becomes more than requests. It becomes surrender. We begin to trust not only what God can do, but who He is. Prayer becomes a safe place where fears, anxieties, dreams, and decisions can be laid down. There, the soul finds rest and faith finds direction. Daily intimacy with God changes how we see life. Challenges still exist, but they no longer define us. Battles arise, but they no longer control us. The heart learns to remain steady because it knows it is not alone. In God we find shelter, wisdom, comfort, and strength to keep moving forward. Worship, prayer, and testimony become natural expressions of a life surrendered to the Lord. Not obligations, but responses of love. When we speak of what God has done, we encourage others to believe. When we give thanks, our own faith is strengthened. When we pray, we align ourselves with heaven. May your life be a living declaration of God's faithfulness. May your words, actions, and choices reveal that the Lord is still at work. Do not keep to yourself the miracles, deliverances, and new beginnings God has already given you. Someone may be waiting for the hope you carry. May your heart remain firm, confident, and full of faith. May the presence of the Lord be your greatest security. And may you remember every day, God is still taking care of everything, even when you cannot see it. If you declare that Jesus reigns over your life and you fully trust Him, write, "Jesus is the Lord of my life," in the comments. Amen.